Hello and welcome to Browsing the Bible. I'm Scott Burgess. Today we are continuing our study in the book of Ephesians with our series entitled The Mystery of the Spirit. We're looking at chapter 4 today, and so let's go ahead and dive right in here to verses 2 and 3. It says, "With all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit by the bond of peace." So please notice right here, the Holy Spirit has pervaded the book of Ephesians, and right now he reappears in chapter 4, and this time his expressed goal is to bring unity in the body of believers. Let's continue here in verses 4 through 6. It says, "There is one body and one Spirit, even as you are called in one hope of your calling." Recall, we learned earlier in the book of Ephesians that the body refers to the church, with its various members cooperating with each other in harmony. The one Spirit that actuates the church is the Holy Spirit. Just as we individually have a body and a spirit, so likewise the church has a body and the Holy Spirit actuating it. There is one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is above all and through all and in you all. God is a God of order. There is only one true faith, and that is the faith that accords in every detail with the Bible. We have many denominations today. We have not yet come into true unity. There is one baptism. Ultimately, this is the baptism of the Holy Spirit. However, this is typified by the rite of baptism, and water baptism there's only one form of that as well, and that is by immersion. And the reason for that is very simple. The word baptism, baptizo, simply means to immerse. It does not refer to sprinkling, as is common in some denominations. It does not refer to having it done in some other convenient way, maybe over the telephone or any such thing. It is by being immersed in water. As we continue right here, please notice. It says, "To that end, he granted some to be apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some shepherds and teachers, in order to equip the saints for the work of ministering, for building up the body of the Messiah." So notice all these various spiritual gifts, whether it is that of apostles, which today our closest approximation would be those who are sent out as missionaries, whether it be those who are evangelists who go around presenting the message, whether it's any spiritual gift, really. All of these gifts are for one purpose, and that is to build up, to edify, to make strong the body of the Messiah. And the body, of course, is the church, of which he is the head. And then it goes on here in verse 13, and it says this, "Until we all attain to the unity of the faith and the proper knowledge of the Son of God, that is, until we attain unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the Messiah's full stature." Unity of the faith. This is what we want. We mentioned just a minute ago that the Christian church at large is not in unity. It's fragmented into so many denominations. But the work of the Holy Spirit will continue until finally everyone is brought in together into one true faith. Now we have to be careful because the devil has a counterfeit for everything. So rest assured that the devil will effect a counterfeit coming together, a false unity of the faith. One that is not based on sound biblical doctrine, one that is actually formed by setting aside doctrine and focusing on a very undeveloped idea of Jesus alone. This may sound good, it is not. We need to be built up on solid doctrine. The ecumenism of today is the counterfeit. Rather, we need to be searching for a church that has true, sound, entirely biblical beliefs. May not be filled with perfect people just yet, because God is still accomplishing that. But we need to find one that has true biblical doctrine. And not only is the Holy Spirit going to achieve this unity of the faith for all who are willing, it says that it is to result in a perfect man, perfect character. And then what is perfect? Well, it says the Messiah's full stature, his character. Doesn't mean that we become God. That does not mean that we become Messiah. But it does mean we become one flesh with him, which will be explored in chapter 5 a little further. But it does mean that we're going to have his character. Now, as we continue here, verses 17 and 18. "You are no longer to walk as the rest of the Gentiles walk, darkened in the mind." Well, this makes good sense, doesn't it? How can we be calling people out of the world into the church if once inside the church, we're continuing to live as we used to live, as the so-called Gentiles, the heathen, the unbelievers. That would make no sense, right? What would be the draw to come into the church? People are looking for something that is entirely different, something that truly represents Jesus. Over here in verses 22 onward, it says, "You were to put away, concerning the former conduct, the old man, which is corrupt by reason of its deceitful inclinations." The old man, the old nature, is inclined only toward evil. Now, what is to happen here? Please notice, in verses 23 and 24, we are to experience renewal of our mind by the Holy Spirit. And then in verse 24, we are to put on the new man, as though it were a garment, created in harmony with God in true righteousness and holiness. One thought here, it says that we're to put on the new man. And I mentioned that as a garment. This is entirely true. Elsewhere in Paul's letter to the Galatians, it talks about, again, putting on this new character. And we know that the garment that God's people are to be clothed in is the fine linen, which is the righteousness of the saints, it says in the book of Revelation. And so here we put on the new man as a garment in true righteousness and holiness. It says here in verse 27, we're not to give opportunity to the devil. Why would we put ourselves in positions that we know are going to tempt us towards sin? Verse 28 and 29 says, "The thief is no longer to steal." That would be the 8th commandment. Verse 29, "No corrupt word is to come out of our mouth." We want to honor the Lord in everything that we say, think, and do. And we're going to see in the next chapter that God has a lot to tell us about right speech. This honors Him or dishonors Him if we choose to engage in the wrong kind of talking. In verse 30, it says, "We are not to grieve God's Holy Spirit, by whom we are sealed unto the day of ransom release." The Holy Spirit. We should be praying as did David, "Take not thy Holy Spirit from me." It is possible to grieve Him away. Nobody else can chase Him away for us. But by our own free will, by our own choices, we can grieve away God's Spirit, as did, say, King Saul. There are examples in the Bible of those who have committed that unpardonable sin of just totally deafening their ear to the Holy Spirit. And then there's nothing more that God can do for such a person. The Holy Spirit, though, is the very one who seals us. He is the earnest of our inheritance. So let's be asking for the fresh infilling of the Holy Spirit every day. And then we close with these verses right here. In verse 31, it says that all bitterness, intolerance, anger that seeks retribution, outcry, and slander is to be removed from us with all malice. And then notice in verse 32, what should take its place? Well, it says right here, by contrast, to become kind toward each other, tender-hearted, graciously forgiving each other, just as God, by Christ, graciously forgave us. This is what we want. We want a character as described in verse 32. Let us put away all those character attributes of verse 31, all the ways in which we used to walk. Put all that selfishness away. Let God's Holy Spirit fill us, and let us reflect Him to this world. Well, that's our message for today. I encourage you to join us next time. And if you don't know where to tune in, please go to our YouTube channel, which is Browsing the Bible. I've put the banner there on the screen for you so that you can know exactly what it looks like when you arrive there. And there, you will be able to watch prior videos in this series on Ephesians. You can also watch our other videos on Jonah, the book of Philemon, some basic Bible questions answered, other books of the Bible, and there's new content coming every week. Until next time, I encourage you to please browse the Bible. Bye-bye.